All right, so today I'm going to tell you a story of two of the largest M-Health innovations in the world. And this is a story of a lot of struggle, of hard work, of innovation and creativity, but also most critically, the story of changing people's lives. So about 5.5 years back, BBC Media Action was tasked with saving lives of mothers, newborns, and infants in the state of Bihar in India by driving demand for health services, by shaping norms and transforming behaviors. The intent was to reduce several of the indicators or improve several of the indicators related to maternal and child health, and thereby reduce maternal and child mortality in the state. Uh, the project, of course, was covering women who were either pregnant or had a child up to 2 years of age. And there were a range of behaviors that we were supposed to work on, starting from safe delivery, prevention of preventive postnatal care, early and exclusive breastfeeding, postpartum family planning, uh, exclusive breastfeeding, as well as infant and young child feeding. We were also looking at things like immunization and early childhood diseases such as malaria, pneumonia, etc. So there was a large number of behaviors that we were supposed to impact in that 33 critical months from the time when a woman is pregnant to the time the child is 2 years of age. And when we entered the state of Bihar, we realized that it's not going to be an easy cakewalk, because first of all, the overall state has about 108 million people. Out of those 108 million people, there are only 4,000 registered doctors. So most people had never actually been to a doctor, never had seen a doctor. Getting health information to them was really difficult because only about 18% of them had any kind of access to mass media, whether it was television or radio. Women had even lower access, about 14%. However, what we did realize was that there are about 200,000 health workers in the state. And these health workers are on ground, they're in the villages, and they're tasked with the responsibility of communicating health information to the families and counseling them and encouraging positive behaviors. So that was a huge sales force that was available to us. Now, at the same time, we knew that reaching to even 200,000 health workers is not an easy task. So, we started looking at what are our options, and we realized, of course, technology is an option, and mobile phones are almost ubiquitous. At the time when we started out, we knew that in any solution that we come up with has to have technology at the heart of it. But we didn't know what technology, we didn't know, what it will do for us. But we knew it's a compelling solution. And we started looking at that opportunity. We did a huge research, and we realized about 82% of men as well as women in Bihar had access to a mobile phone. And about 63% of men and 32% women at that time, this is about 5.5 years back, had actually owned their own mobile phone, which was remarkable and that number over time has grown up dramatically. I mean, right now, if you look at penetration of mobile phones, you would find almost 80% ownership of mobile phones. And even amongst women, it's gone up over 60%. And amongst the health workers, there was almost 98% access and an almost similar ownership level of mobile phones. So we knew mobile phones are a solution, and it's a huge opportunity. But there were also huge challenges to overcome. Most of them didn't own smartphones. Their phones looked like this: old, tattered Nokia, or a ripoff of Nokia like Nokai. They were often tied up with rubber band or elastic or strings. The number pad was rubbed off. So these were not smart devices. I mean, there was no question we could think of putting apps onto it or have the features that we often have on apps that are designed for smartphones. What we also realized was most of them can't read. I mean, the literacy level is extremely low in rural Bihar. Even amongst the health workers, while most of them were literate, they were educated only until class 8. And most of them had never, 91% in fact, had never used SMS, had never sent an SMS. In fact, when we went out into the field and we started talking to them, we realized that they didn't even know how to get to the SMS feature on the phone. So again, we knew that we cannot work with text-based solutions. It had to be voice-based. We also knew that most of the customers were prepaid customers, and more than 60% spent less than $1 per month on their telephony needs. So it was the term used in the mobile circles is ARPU, revenue per user. And we realized that the revenue per user in rural markets is extremely low. So any service that we launch has to be very, very cost effective. So, we thought, how do we start designing sustainable, effective ML solutions for millions of people? And we started looking at mHealth. And what we realized about mHealth was that there's too much focus on technology and as opposed to people. And we talk about technology-based solutions for people, but what we realized is happening is that people were getting lost in the equation. And the reason for that was very simple. There are only two types of organizations that are developing ML solutions. One are the technology companies that understand technology and are, of course, very interested in developing apps and sophisticated products, but they don't necessarily understand the context of the people. On the other hand, you have the NGOs who understand the context of the people, but have no clue of technology. And therefore, that perfect blend, that perfect marriage of technology that works for people in those contexts was just not happening. So there were no off-the-shelf solutions that we could pick up and, and design services around those. And, I've seen some really bizarre solutions out there. So, for example, mHealth tech services for largely illiterate populations. And this is across the world, from Africa to India, to other countries in Southeast Asia, where, even include the government, NGOs, all of them are creating text-based services without a sense of the fact that the target audience is either illiterate or can't access a specific language font on their phones. Then there are these algorithm-based apps for health workers on old Nokia phones to collect health information, to counsel the families. Again, there's a reason why old Nokia phones did not have apps. There were no apps when there were old Nokia phones, because it's really, really hard to try and work on an app with those buttons and with that small screen and with none of the functionality that we're used to in a smartphone. So again, they're being developed, they're out there, but very few have gone to scale. Then there are these handset distribution schemes. Government's been talking about, distributing handsets, and typically it's to a 50 health workers, 100 health workers, or 1,000 health workers, and they never ever go to scale because there are serious constraints with distributing handsets. First, you need to distribute the same handsets across all the health workers. So if you're talking about India, there are about 1 million health workers out there. So there's a cost of procurement. Then there is a cost of maintenance because, phones go bad, screens break. Then there are power issues. Even if you were to distribute a smart phone to the health workers, there's not enough electricity in rural markets to power those phones. I mean, a smartphone consumes 4 to 5 times more power than an old Nokia phone. So again, if you look at it overall, there are about 10,000 or actually 100,000 mHealth pilots across the world right now. Only about 3% of the maternal and child health mHealth projects have succeeded in the market or have gone to any degree of scale. So what we really needed and what BBC Media Action believed in was human-centric design. So human solutions require a confluence of technology and art, but most critically to understand, it requires an understanding of the people that we are working with. So the design process that we followed had 3 simple fundamental elements. The first was insight, which is understanding people. So, you really need to understand people's fears, their motivations, how they use technology, what is their relationship with technology. Like my mother, she's extremely scared of using any form of technology. And a lot of the health workers in the villages are my mother's age, and they've never actually seen technology in their life. So there is a certain fear of using technology, and you need to understand those. And then there is in the innovation itself. And to me, innovation is anything that makes people's lives easier. If something, you might have a really smart, fancy solution, but if it doesn't make people's life easier, it's meaningless. It has to make a significant impact on people's lives. And finally, interface. If you look at any big innovation in the last 20, 30, 40 years, especially technology-based innovation, the most critical element of that innovation that has made it a success is the interface, whether it was, it's the smart phone screens that are touch-enabled, or the click wheel on the iPod, or the mouse. All these are innovations that are linked to creating the interaction of people with technology simpler. So we knew we have to work with these three things, but also we wanted to look at, what are the critical elements? Why should we actually use technology? Can't we just go out and do what has been done for, decades, which is go out, train the health workers, give them some flip chart, and expect them to start using it? So the first thing we said was, let's identify the problem that technology can solve, because not everything can be solved by technology, not all problems. So for example, the diagnostic skills of a sophisticated, trained health provider like a doctor cannot be solved by technology. But provision of information can easily be solved by technology. So we knew it is a viable solution. And then identify the technology that can solve that problem. So not every technology is going to work in every context. And we just talked about a few of those examples. So identifying the right technology was really critical. And I'm going to get into, some of the technology choices that we had to make as we went along and started talking to, our audiences and understanding what is most likely to work and what is definitely going to fail. And finally, design an interface that works. So having an interface that's really simple for people to use was the other principle that we worked with. So if you look at, the thing with big ideas is that there's always skepticism around them. And the reason why there's skepticism, and if you look at this guy, he's probably invented the wheel, at the time of the Stone Age, and everybody said, oh, it's never going to work. And the reason is that most great ideas in retrospect seem very obvious. I mean, if you think about the wheel, it's the most obvious idea. You cannot think that anybody would challenge it. But at the time of inception, ideas don't look so great because they're so radical that they're out of the context in which people exist. So, and that's what we faced. Some of the ideas we came up with were so radical that it just didn't fit the context of what people believed is likely to work. But that was the brilliant thing about what we were doing, that we were trying to challenge a lot of the norms, a lot of the preconceived notions about how information can be delivered in rural markets. In fact, even the big marketeers like Unilever were not able to crack the rural market because they just didn't know how technology can work with this population. So, the starting point of any innovation is a difficult question. If you don't have a difficult question, if you don't have a really big challenge in front of you, there's no point of doing an innovation. Why would you reinvent the wheel if there's no need to reinvent it? So we posed ourselves some really difficult challenges, and each challenge that we posed ourselves resulted in an innovation that was really unique, that really worked. And I'm going to share just two of them today. So the first challenge we posed ourselves in, and the reason why we posed this challenge is that the health workers, when we entered Bihar, we realized they're extremely demotivated. They didn't like trainings because they have to leave their family, go and go to an off location. They have to spend their own money. Often they don't get reimbursed. So there are all kinds of issues, and they felt that they're overworked, they're underpaid. Typical problems of a government employee at the grassroots level. And at the same time, we were expecting them to do something really, really difficult. We were expecting them to become salespeople, to sell the notions and ideas of certain behaviors that have existed, for centuries. So, for example, if you look at family planning, selling a shoe is difficult. Imagine trying to sell family planning to a population that does not believe in family planning, that believes that children are God's gift. So it's a very difficult task to do. And they had no tool or training to do that. I mean, most salespeople have a laptop or an iPad, or they're at the sales counter, they can show you the product, but these guys had absolutely nothing. So to solve these two problems, one of giving them a viable tool, and second of giving them a really viable way of getting trained in a manner that they would enjoy, these were the two fundamental challenges. So the first challenge that we posed ourselves was, can we create a paper-based IPC toolkit that can accommodate 9 to 14 behaviors, because that's the number of behaviors we are talking about. And each behavior had a linked simple doable action, but not one simple doable action. Each one had maybe up to 8, 10 simple doable actions, because, for example, family planning is not just one behavior. There's so many behaviors within family planning. So we are talking about 45 to 70 simple doable actions and over 100 attitudinal, normative, and belief arguments that had to be given through that communication. And what we wanted, that all this information should be so easily and portable and carryable that FLW can carry it at all times with all its content. And while doing all of this, we wanted this product to create excitement and motivation amongst the users and the target audiences. So that was a big ask from one innovation. But our answer was yes. And we wanted to do a multimedia toolkit. And that toolkit was called Mobile Kunji. Now I'll tell you what Mobile Kunji looks like. I'm going to show it to you. Now, typically in the past, what has been done is you've got flip charts, the large flip charts that look like calendars, and you have a picture on it and you have text on the other side, and we expect the health workers to carry it around and show it to the families. But it just doesn't work because it's heavy, it's bulky. Health workers already have registers and files and folders to carry. They never carry it. It's never used. So we wanted to really do something that was small, that was compact. And the first idea that we came up with was, let's do a smartphone, right? Just like everybody else. And at that time, there was a phone that was launched. It was called the Popcorn, Spice Popcorn. It had a little Pico projector in front, and you could put multimedia content on it. And, we said, this will be absolutely fantastic, because if we can load our content on it, health workers can go into households, play the video, project it on their walls. It'll change the game. It will be absolutely game changing. But then, reality hit us, and we realized nobody's going to buy those 200,000 smartphones. And even if they were, they're not going to be able to maintain it, their power issues, all the issues that I talked about. So we said, okay, we're talking about something paper-based. How can we use technology with a paper-based solution? And that's when we came up with Mobile Kunji. This is what it looks like. This is what Mobile Kunji, it's a deck of cards. It's made out of credit card material. There are about 44 cards on the deck. And it follows a very simple trajectory of the time from when a woman is pregnant to the time when the child is 2 years of age. So you can, if you're talking to a woman who's pregnant, you'll probably use the cards in the beginning. They're all color coded. If you're talking to a woman who's got a child, who's about 6 months old, you'll go somewhere here. So it's very easy to navigate. It's quite user friendly. And the way it works is that each card has, so let's take this card, right? It has an image here. It has a little conversation starter on the top. It has some basic talking points at the back. And basically when you start talking to a family, you start with a conversation starter. So for example, the conversation starter could be, let's say you're talking about safe delivery, right? And you're talking about birth preparedness. You could say 3 out of 10 women are likely to develop a complication during pregnancy. How do you know you will not be one of them? That's what gets the intrigue going. That's what gets the concern going. And that starts off the conversation. The image typically shows the solution or the problem, or, it shows the method for doing something. So that's your visual piece. Now at the bottom of each card, if you notice, there's a short number. And this number is basically a short code that a health worker can use when she gets stuck in the conversation. So let's say she starts talking about family planning. The mother-in-law comes and says, children are God's gift. We don't want you talking about family planning. What she does is she dials this number and she plays a pre-recorded IVR-based audio message of a doctor. And that completely changes the game. It changes the game because, as I said, in a population of 108 million people in Bihar, there are only 4,000 doctors. And most people have never seen a doctor, but they have a great regard for a doctor. They consider the doctor, as someone who's an expert who can help them in time of need, in terms of emergency. They respect the doctor a lot more than they respect the health worker. So what this does is it creates credibility for the message. It creates credibility for the health worker. It helps in standardization of message, and it really you see things from a very different perspective, because it's no longer somebody from your village telling you to do something. It's something coming from up there, from a doctor. It really totally changes the game, and everybody starts listening. And we've seen the result of this, when we've gone to the field and we've done our research, the kind of impact that this kind of, delivery of messaging does. Credible, standardized, there's no risk of, messages going wrong. And that's a big thing, and particularly for BBC Media Action, because we take liability for all our content. So if this messaging is not standardized and the health workers ends up saying something wrong, and that leads to a loss of life, we would be liable. So we wanted to make sure that, the messages are standardized and they're complemented by the health worker, or the health worker, or our messages get complemented, and so she gets complemented by our messages. So in addition to, delivering the message, the other great advantage of Mobile Kunji is that it's a self-monitoring tool. And what it does is, for every call that is made, we get back-end data by health worker, by location, and by the card number. So we know exactly on which day, which health worker has used which card. And that's a huge thing, because in the health system, in most countries, while the health workers exist, nobody has a clue what the health worker does through the day. Monitoring is very, very difficult. And in India, since the health workers have existed for the last several decades, the government has had absolutely no clue what they do through the day. But now with Mobile Kunji, they're able to get that information in real time, and not just get the information, they're able to loop it back and feed back that information right down at the sub-center level. So there are districts and blocks and sub-blocks and sub-center. So we're actually able to take that high-level information of the usage patterns and take it right down to the grassroots level. And the supervisor of a particular health worker can encourage the health worker to use more of Mobile Kunji, but also use specific cards. So if she's been using more of breastfeeding messages because she's comfortable with it, but not using so much of family planning, or not using so much of diarrhea management cards, we know have that information, and the supervisor has that information, and all the supervisor does is start encouraging the health worker to use more and more of the other cards also. And again, that data keeps coming back and the performance keeps improving. So it becomes a data-driven management tool, it becomes a performance management tool, and it is a communication tool. So it serves many different purposes. Now, all calls on Mobile Kunji are absolutely free, and the way we were able to do this is that, first of all, what we did was we had significant negotiations with the mobile operators. So, if you worked in the mobile sector, you'll realize that short codes or short mobile numbers are real estate in this business. And they're real estate because they're easy to promote, they're easy to remember. So it's very hard to get a short code. But getting one short code is big deal. What we were able to achieve was get 99 different short codes. There are about 44 on Mobile Kunji itself, but then there are, for other services, we needed more short codes. So we were able to get 99 short codes from operators. But that's not all. Typically, it's almost impossible to get the same short code across different operators. And there's a reason for that. Every operator works across multiple telecom circles, and they never share information. So one telecom circle may have one short code open, another telecom circle may have another short code open, and because they don't talk to each other, there's no way of knowing whether one particular short code is available across the country, across all the operators. And even a big franchise like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, the TV show, when they have an audience facing question, they ask, Idea users call this number, Vodafone users dial this number, and so on and so forth. Even they don't have one single common number. But we were able to get that, and it really required significant negotiation with the operators. Then we were able to negotiate a 90% reduction in the standard tariff for value-added services. So, we were able to bring it down from almost 6 rupees to under 50 paisa, making it cheaper than a peer-to-peer call. So, making a call to one of these services is cheaper than making a call to your friend. And then on top of that, we wanted to make the services sustainable. So we negotiated, on top of the 90% tariff reduction, revenue share. And that revenue share ranged anywhere between 10% to 20%. So we said, we want a revenue share on this, because if you have to make these services sustainable, then the services have to make some money out of it without the customer having to bear the cost. So with all these things in place, and all of these were industry first, they had never been done. This kind of tariff reduction, this common short codes, revenue share on a vast service at that price point, these were all industry first. So we were able to tie up with all the mobile operators and make the service completely toll-free. The small amount of tariff that was being levied was being paid for initially by the project, and was then later on taken on by the government. And I'm going to talk about the scale of this a bit later on. But before that, I want to talk about our next service, which is called Mobile Academy. And the question we posed ourselves for this was, can we create an academy that can train 200,000 community health workers at the same time, where content is standardized and trainers are necessary? An academy that enables health workers to complete the course anywhere, anytime, at the fraction of the cost of a face-to-face training. Now, we know face-to-face training is extremely expensive, probably costs about $20 per head per day for the training. And we also knew health workers don't like doing that, because they have to travel, they have to leave their children behind, they often don't get reimbursed for their travel. So we wanted to eliminate all of that and create a course that's absolutely free to, it's not free to use, but it's easy to use when you want, where you want, how you want. And the reason why I said it's not free to use is because we wanted to do something absolutely, completely radical. We wanted to get the health workers who were demotivated, who didn't like training, to start paying for their own training. And there were 2-3 reasons for that. One, we wanted to make the service sustainable, and therefore somebody had to pay for it. Second, we know from a lot of work in the social communication arena, particularly on things like condoms, that unless people pay for them, they don't use them. They don't value them. So we knew that if we want health workers to value the training, we've got to get them to pay for it. So how did we do it? Basically, Mobile Academy is an audio-based training course. It is delivered via mobile phones. So all you have to do is to dial that same short code 57711 from any phone. It may be Nokia, it may be Nokia. You dial the number, you start listening to content. And the content is divided into 10 chapters, and each chapter has 4 lessons. As you complete 4 lessons and reach the end of the chapter, there's a mini quiz. You answer that quiz by pressing 1 or 2. So this question asked, you just press 1 or 2 to answer. If your answer is right, there's a little applause that happens, and you move on to the next level. And it's and even if you don't answer correctly, it prompts you, but then it takes you to the next level. And the beauty is that it's got bookmarking facilities. So, the moment you hang up, it might be because the phone got disconnected because of signal issues. It might be because your son was calling you or your daughter was calling you, you couldn't talk. So you disconnect. When you go back, you reach exactly the same point where you left off. So that gives you the flexibility to complete the course anytime, anywhere. You can do it in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. You can do it in 3 months. You can do it in 2 months. You can do it in 6 months, or in 3 days if you want to. So it's absolutely up to you how you want to do it, when you want to do it, and if you want to do it. And what we realized was they didn't want to do it. The cost actually cost about $2, about $1.5 actually to complete. But most health workers ended up paying more than $3 to $4 for it because they went again and again to improve their score. They all wanted 100% score. There was competitiveness that emerged. There were blocks and districts that started competing with each other, where who will complete the course fastest, who will get the highest score, who will get the certificate first. So the big attraction for them was the certificate that they would get at the end of the completion of the course from the government of India, from the Ministry of Health, and that encouraged them to improve their scores and compete with each other. And in all, I think health workers ended up paying more than $15,000 in total amongst 200,000 health workers to complete this course. So we were able to create a model where not only we got them interested in training, but we actually got them interested in paying for that training. So now let's look at the kind of design decisions we took. So we said it's a course anytime, anywhere. It has to be handset agnostic. So any handset you may be using, you can do it. It was about 160 minutes. It says 9 chapters here, but there were about 10 chapters later on. There was a quiz at the end of each chapter. There was a cumulative pass or fail score. And we said all those who pass will receive a printed certificate of completion at their monthly sub-center meeting. So there was almost instant gratification. First, when you answer the right question, but then when you complete the course, you get the certificate and you feel really good about it. So I've already talked about a lot of the industry first, and I want to talk a little bit about why these were important. Now, we could have done what a lot of other people who use IVR do, which is not go to the operators. You go to an aggregator who is a service provider. You tell them this is the service, you give them the content, and you put it there. The problem with that is that the cost is extremely high because they are not integrated with the billing system of the operators. There's a separate cost that is there for value-added services. And to really take this to scale, to make it really accessible, cheap, we had to go directly to the operators and integrate into their billing cycle. So we did have aggregators and we did have services hosted with the aggregator for service provision, but then we also simultaneously, there was a mirror hosting that happened at the operators. The other advantage of hosting it with the operators was that we were able to terminate the calls within the same state, because once this service started growing, beyond just Bihar, you had to have data centers that were based in one location, but you also wanted the calls to terminate in the same state. Otherwise, there would be charges which are cross circle charges, and that increases the cost. So to keep the cost down, we had to host it with the operator. So these were some difficult choices. It meant that we had to work way more than what anybody else would need to who's not working with an operator. We had to go to the operator's office, discuss the short code, then go to the next one, discuss the same short code with them, then go to the next one, discuss the same. It was a extremely challenging process. And BBC Media Action as an NGO, it's a large NGO, but if you look at even one operator like Airtel, their daily income or revenue from one city, and they operate across hundreds of cities, their daily revenue from one city per day is more than the annual revenue of BBC Media Action combined across the world. So we were not really on a negotiating platform with them. But I think what worked for us was our ability to convince them that this is really good for the people. And that's what really worked. And there were times when we told them that, maybe you don't agree with our terms, but can you really afford to not have these services on your platform? And they got it. They immediately got it. They realized that they cannot lose out on something that's so big and something that's going to become so big, because they were able to see the potential. And in terms of scale, so we started out with about 8 districts. and about 2 million women in those 8 districts that were either pregnant or had a child over 6 years of age. And there were about 20,000 health workers in those districts. From there, we have gone to the entire state, about 200,000 health workers. We then moved to, and that's an ongoing process, so, increasing the number of health workers on the service. We then went to another state called Orissa. And when we went to Orissa, things changed again completely. The reason why they changed there was that government decided to pick up the costs. And they had this mandate to work with the government operator only, which is BSNL. So we said, fine, we can work with that. And we launched the service with BSNL, and the government made both Mobile Kunji and Mobile Academy toll free. And they paid for their training costs, they paid for the call costs, they also paid for all the supervision costs, etc. So it actually meant that the burden on a donor like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation came down significantly as we went to scale. We then moved to the largest state of India, UP, Uttar Pradesh, which has a population of about 250 million people and about 200,000 health workers only from one cadre. So there are a total of about 400,000 health workers in that state. And when we went there, the government became even more interested, and they started also paying for the printing of the deck of cards. And they were actually, because of the scale, able to bring the cost of the printing down to a level where it became cheaper than anything they had ever done for health workers before. So at that scale, this became the most cost-effective, cheap solution available to the government with or without technology. So just the printing cost also was cheaper than anything that they had printed before. And then so when all this was happening, we were able to get the central government interested. In fact, they approached us and said, can we take these services that are already running in 3 or 4 states national? And taking it national was not an easy task. It meant 1 million health workers, reaching out to almost 350 million families. And these were not the only services. We had other services also, and they were interested in those. So there's one service that's direct to consumers called Kilkari, where once a woman registers a pregnancy with the government, she starts receiving a weekly phone call related to with a message related to the stage of her pregnancy or the age of her child. So that was another service which had to reach out to almost 350 million women annually. And what the government wanted was to own the service, which we were very happy with. That was the intent right from beginning, that we set it up, we do the innovation, they take it on, take it to scale. But the challenges were linked to technology, because the government wanted to set up their own platform. So we had to work very closely with them on establishing the platform, on standardizing costs, of helping them even write the RFPs or work with the RFPs on how to select the vendors, because this is not a governments don't have technology. They're not technology companies. They're not technology experts. They know how to run the country, but they don't know how to run a technology. So they needed a lot of expertise. But the fact that we were able to get the government interested enough to take it to scale where it can reach millions of people happened because every possible research that we did, and we did several. We did qualitative surveys, we did quantitative surveys, we did we used not complete randomization, but we did use quasi-experimental designs, and we were able to demonstrate that there were significant changes or benefits that occurred because of both Mobile Kunji, Mobile Academy, and our other services. So with Mobile Academy, there were significant improvements in the motivation level of health workers, in the learning outcomes of the health workers, in their ability to communicate with the families, as well as the credibility that they had within the community. And with Mobile Kunji, of course, again, there was the credibility factor, the credibility of the message itself, the credibility of the health worker. But then most critically, there was increased retention of knowledge among families. There were changes recorded in attitude, and most critically in the behaviors themselves. We are able to see statistically significant improvements in health behaviors, such as nutrition, and these are behaviors that have not moved for years in India. malnutrition is a problem that has existed for hundreds of years. And in a state like Bihar, which had one of the poorest health indicators, we were able to make significant impact in nutrition behaviors. So we knew this was working, and that is the reason why government got interested. And while the government got interested, even other donors got interested. So government paid for all the implementation costs, and donors stepped up to pay for all the design costs, because of course the language had to be adapted for each state, for each context. So there was a lot of redesign work in terms of the content, not necessarily to change the content, but to adapt the content for each state, for each geography. And so we had several donors pitch in, and we had the government taking on the bulk of the cost. So today, these services have become the largest ML services in the world. And I think to me, the most important success factor in all of this is the fact that they are so simple. It's all about making a single phone call. If it weren't as simple as it is, if it was, even if there was a simple menu tree with 2 options, like your bank has, dial this for, X and dial 2 for that, and so on and so forth, you tend to forget that menu even before you've, started listening to the content. So the fact that all our services were based on voice, there was no text, there was no complication, just voice. Second, it was based on the simple idea of making one phone call or receiving one phone call, and at best pressing one button once you're inside the service. I think that interface, that simplicity is what made this so easy. And I think as my parting thoughts, I think the future is of course in smartphones, but it would, at least in India, I expect it to take at least 10 to 15 years before every single individual, every family has a smartphone. Until that time, rather than trying to come up with fancy solutions that, will never go to scale, or will go to, 50, 100, 500 health workers and maybe a couple of thousand families, I would recommend look at solutions that work in the context where you're working, and then design the services with the technology that works in that context. So don't work with technology, work with the people who are going to use the technology. And that's going to make all the difference in the solutions that you come up with to save people's lives. Thank you.